This is a seminar on electronic microcontrollers, trains, et cetera, as I have on the screen. I've been doing this for about 13 years. I think almost as long as the show's been in York. I think it was on the East Coast for 1 or 2 years. And it's just an opportunity for me to perhaps pay back a little bit to the hobby and show people some of the neat things I've discovered over the last year, review some things that we may have seen before. Speaking of which, how many have been to one of my talks before? Like, oh my. Okay, a little better than half. That's excellent. And you came back. That means, yeah, something. Okay. Price is right. Absolutely.
Good morning. The 10 o'clock seminar is starting now. Dave Bodnar will present on how easy it can be to use microcontrollers and other simple electronics. That's 10 o'clock right now in the seminar room.
How about that? Okay. I think I mentioned before that I'm a teacher by training. I always have objectives. I'd like to demonstrate various devices and projects that use microcontrollers and a lot of things that don't. And the main objective is to excite you with the possibilities and enable you to begin experimenting and enhancing your railroad. Or just kind of have fun, because there's a lot of neat stuff out there, and whether you apply it to model railroads or not doesn't really matter to me. Okay, let's start off with some smoke. This was one of my favorite things that I showed last year, and it's certainly worth reviewing. I wanted to have smoke come out of a factory. This is my HO module. I belong to a modular club, and looked at a lot of different options. You can buy a dozen different smoke controllers. They're expensive, they take a lot of power, they stink because they generally burn some sort of an oil. And I decided to start experimenting with e-cigarettes. And what I discovered, let me fire this up. Is that better or worse? I don't know. The lighting's kind of hard to get right. And this, I have not added any smoke fluid in it for at least a week, so it's running on very little. The thing that's interesting about this, when I first started experimenting with e-cigarettes, let me show you some pictures here. I bought that little package of e-cigarettes, and I discovered that inside of it, there we go, we're really cooking. And you should only run this for about 30-40 seconds at a time, because it's not meant for continuous duty. If you want continuous duty, you have 2 of them and have it switch back and forth between them, let it cool in between. Inside of an e-cigarette, in the bottom is a battery, usually a lithium battery. You've probably seen things on TV where people's pockets have burst into flame because they're cheap lithium batteries. And there's a heating unit that the battery attaches to, and it heats up a liquid. Well, the interesting thing, it's not smoke. When you smoke a cigarette, you're actually burning tobacco and whatever else is in there. What happens with this, it's a mixture of vegetable glycerin, 100% is what I'm using, and a little bit of water. And there's a heating element in there, and the heating element boils the water, which has a lower boiling temperature than the glycerin, and little bubbles, I suppose you would call them, spritz off, and that's what you're seeing. You're seeing vaporized vegetable glycerin, not smoke. So even though a lot of places have outlawed them because they have nicotine and all kind of other stuff, if you make an e-cigarette smoke machine like this and use this, this is pure vegetable glycerin. It's not going to hurt anybody. It's not burning it. All it does is vaporize it. Okay, let me show you how I put this whole thing together. This is one of my original prototypes. What are these? We all know pill bottles, right? I figured that I could put a vacuum pump on it, because on an e-cigarette you draw in, but if you put a vacuum pump, you're going to get all that gook into the pump. So I figured instead of sucking it in from the top, I would blow from the bottom. So there's a chamber down here that's attached to a little pump. This pump, how many have a Keurig coffee making machine or used one in a hotel? You know, I'm talking about you put the water in a little pod and you press it down. And I don't know if you ever noticed, but at the end of the Keurig cycle, a little motor runs for about 30 seconds, purging the liquid from it. That's what this is. And you can buy these surplus on eBay for a couple of bucks. So it's a little air pump. It pressurizes this bottom chamber. Now between these two pill bottles is one of those heating units. I discovered you can buy the heating unit that's in that e-cigarette that I bought for a couple bucks on eBay. You can buy these for, I think they're $5 for $7. That's what's in between the two pill bottles. You put a little bit of the glycerin in the top. There's just a piece of tubing there and a cap, and that's your smoke machine. I have set this up at train shows where I'm running that factory on the module, run it all day. Now again, not continuous. I've got it set up on a timer so that it runs for 30 seconds, it's off for 30 or 40 seconds, and back and forth. But it puts out a phenomenal amount of smoke. Now let me pass these around. Here's two. Don't turn them upside down because you'll get your clothes all dirty with glycerin. And there's the heating units there. I'll get to that in a second, but thank you for reminding me. Let me skip through here. These are the heating units that I was talking about, $7.50, and that's for a set of 5.
This is on your website?
Yeah, and I always put these notes on my website, so you'll be able to get the PowerPoint slides. Oh, there's a whole, you know me, there's an article on there that, yeah. Okay, let me pass this around too. This stuff is 99.9 USP kosher. Doesn't get much better than that. And this is probably a lifetime supply.
Have you figured out a way to put this in our rankings?
No. Could, I suppose, but no, I never did. I'm more interested in the trackside stuff. Okay, there's the parts that I used. Again, the Keurig pump, couple of pill bottles, some aquarium hose. Now, will you ask about power? Does anyone recognize what this is? This is what I was using to power it. That's a cell phone battery. That's a 3.7 volt cell phone battery. If you have old cell phone batteries that are not completely dead, they probably have a circuit inside that protects them from being overcharged and over-discharged. You can charge that up with a 5 volt, cell phone charger, just make an adapter to attach to it. You can power it with that. If you don't want to do it that way, this is a power, it's a buck converter, but what it is you take, say, 12 volts and it'll bring it down to 3.7. You don't want to run these things on much more than 3 or 4 volts because that's all they're getting in the e-cigarette that people are using. If you run them on 5 or 10 volts, you're going to burn it out. So this little adapter, and these are, I don't know, $5, $8, will take 12 volts or whatever you want to give it and take it down to 3.7. You need a decent amount of amperage. Now, you certainly could run it on AA batteries, like 3 AA batteries, but I don't know how long they would last. Okay, questions?
Can you use this indoors safely?
Sure. You're going to find a mist of glycerin around. I mean, when I was experimenting with this stuff and I had 10 of them running at the same time, it was, there was a little film on my workbench. And when I run them at a train show, they're usually in places like this, and who knows or cares. But yeah, you can do it inside. Outside, if you have a little bit of wind, it dissipates the mist, that vapor pretty quickly. Okay. All right, the latest version, let me pass this one around. If you don't have a pill bottle, this is just, well, you know what that is, hardware store PVC pipe fittings. And there's 3 of them there. So you can make it out of pipe fittings as well. Bottom chamber gets pressurized. In between the 2 chambers is the heater. Top chamber is where the smoke is generated. And there's a video also on YouTube on how to make it. All right, going right along with that one, my other favorite from last year. Let me get this fired up. We had a very generous benefactor that donated a beautiful Harry Potter O-scale train layout to Children's Hospital in Pittsburgh. It's about 12 by 18, and spectacular. And I wanted to have thunder and lightning in the castle. So let's see if I did a decent job of getting us thunder and lightning. I don't want to aim this right at you because it's kind of bright. Not bad? This there's the castle. And the castle is open in the center, and this is aimed up inside of it. And the kids can press a button and have the thunder and lightning. I designed and built this thing in one day. And there's only about 4 components that are of any importance. There's a speaker, obviously. This is an LED light, very bright. An incandescent bulb would not work as well because I think you know that LEDs can go on and off much more rapidly than an incandescent, and it does that. It's got an MP3 player that creates the sound. It plays a memory card that's about the size of my little fingernail. The player itself is about the size of the last joint in my thumb, and the MP3 player is about $5. And making it all work is an Arduino, which we'll talk about a little bit later on, a microcontroller that simply looks at the sound coming from the MP3 player and decides when to turn the light on or off. Okay? I don't want to pass this around plugged in because you will blind yourself or the guy sitting next to you. If you want to see it later on, I'll just leave it sitting up here. Questions? I already talked about that. There's the board. I mean, this little thing is the MP3 player. That's the Arduino. That's the light over there. And there's a speaker off of one of those, wires off to the side. Okay. Ever since I started doing electronics and talks like this, and for that matter, putting articles and videos on YouTube, one of the most frequent questions that I get from folks, they'll say something like, I got a starter set, LGB or Bachmann or something like that, and it runs real well for about 20 minutes and then it stops and the power supply is real hot. What power supply should I buy? Or they'll get a starter set and they'll get a bigger engine, and the one that came with the starter set doesn't work too well. And I'm always hesitant to say, go buy a Bridgeworks, or go buy this or that, because they're really expensive. And I don't use them, so I don't really know what's good and what's not. What I will frequently say to folks, if you're the least bit handy, you can make your own. So I decided to formalize that statement by doing a web page, and I'll do a video hopefully next week on how to do this, but I thought I would show you guys. All you need in order to make a train controller, and I'm not talking about DCC, I'm not talking about wireless, I'm talking about to run a train around a Christmas tree or to run a loop of track. All you need, let me catch up here. We need a power supply. You need some source of, and G-scale we're typically running from 18 to 24 volts. There is a source of free power supplies that I think everyone in this room has access to. And here's one of mine. Anybody recognize what this is? That's a laptop power supply. It happens to be from a compact. And if you retire a laptop, excuse me? Oh. Thank you. Was I seeking them? That's why I keep him around. What you do is you look at, talk to your friends and relatives. Everybody's got an old laptop in a closet. There's another part of my collection. What you want to do is take a close look at the label on the power supply. Virtually all of them are going to say DC. None of them are going to be AC. And let me blow that up a little bit bigger. This one is 18 3/4 volts enough to run G-scale trains. Absolutely. Look at that. 3.15 amps. I don't think too many of us have a single train, not a 3-engine ABA or something, that draws 3 amps. This will run trains all day and all night. Now there's only one problem. If you hook this up to your track, what happens? Full speed. Full speed. Yeah, so you don't want to stick with that. All right, let's continue. So that's the first step. You can also purchase similar power supplies. How many have seen power supplies like this? This is a computer power supply. These are inexpensive. I'll show you a slide in a minute that gives you an idea of the price. The only thing I don't like about it, and I have to warn you about this, see these screws? The first two screws connect to AC power. So if you take a line cord from an old lamp and hook it up to this and this, you've got live voltage sitting on those two screws. So you have to do something. Put it in another box or somehow insulate and protect that. And the other screws are where you get out your voltage. The ones that I've been working with are right here. This is a 24 volt power supply, 6.5 amps for $27. That's a computer grade power supply. That's better than anything Bridgeworks is going to give you. It's a switch mode power supply. Very good quality. And we've been running, we have 3 of them on our G-scale layout in the Garden Railroad Club in Pittsburgh that have been running trains. You know how you run them on when you set up all day long for a weekend or whatever. And we've been doing that for years on them. No failures, no problems. Okay, the second thing you need is a power controller. Bob, where is it? Here we go. I'll pass this around. Basically what you need is something that will take that 18 volts or 24 volts or whatever and vary it from 0 to 18 or 24 volts. Here's one I'll pass around. It's got a knob on it, also called a potentiometer, and that's 0 speed, that's full speed. Pass that around. You're lucky you get to look first. This is another version. This one happens to have the potentiometer on a separate cord, and I'll show you how that kind of comes in handy. It's got 4 screws, power, plus and minus. What do you do there? Take the laptop power supply, hook it into there. Be careful with plus and minus, it matters. If you don't know which one's plus and which one's minus, get a meter out and find out. And what's this? That goes to the track. Motor is, that's where the track is. How much do those things cost? I don't know if I have a slide for that or not. Like 10 bucks. And I'm talking, they're 15 amp. So they're going to have much more capacity than you're ever going to need. The other thing that you need, because if all you use is a power supply and that adjustable guy, your train's only going to go forward. If you want it to go backward, what do you need? A double pole, double throw, toggle switch. I'll pass this around. And you wire it like that. How many of you are familiar with what I'm talking about with a double pole? Okay, you do an X configuration. Pretty simple. And that gives you a forward, reverse switch. You can also get them that have an off in the middle, which is kind of nice sometimes. You want to make sure it's dead. You put it into the middle. Whatever you do, don't get the ones that are momentary and off in the middle. Otherwise, you got to hold it there. Yeah, okay.
Now 15 amps, where are you going to protect your shorts?
Well, you fuse it, and you fuse it at or less than the amount of current that the power supply will provide. I'll talk about fuses in a minute. But this is the wiring for a double pole, double throw switch. You cross the outer terminals, feed the power into the middle ones, and take it off. And if you want to follow that diagram, you can see how it does the switching from one to the other. Any questions up to there? Okay. Then, put it in the box. Now, the first box that I did, this box is really simple. And I'll pass it around with the lid off. Toggle switch for forward to reverse. Remember I had the potentiometer on a string, so I could put it up there and leave the controller down. So that's going to be faster, slower. And I've got track connection here, and I plug that here. Laptop power supply plugs in here. I can run trains. There's 2 bad things about this one. I have not put a fuse in this one yet. So that's kind of, I should. And the second thing is if you ran this at close to 3 amps, it's going to get pretty hot and there's no ventilation. This was really more of a demo, but I'll pass that around. And feel free to take the top off.
There is a reason I like controller.
Yes, there is, but it's not mine. And I might want to add another one. Yes, you're correct. This is another one that I built. The same basic type of controller. There's the potentiometer, there's the forward reverse switch, and again there is a fuse in here. And what's it in? If you go see our buddies at Harbor Freight, this is a camera case. It's supposed to be a knockoff of, I think, a Pelican, which is a real high-end case. What's inside? That controller. Do you remember the power supply I showed you that was real nice? It's down here. This one has a fuse, my fuse on there, as well as one on there. And I think I have it hooked up. Is it going to work? And if I slow it down and go to reverse. Okay, I will disconnect this. Bob, you want to kill that for me and pass this around? Just to give you an idea, that power supply, let's say, was $25. The controller was 10, maybe 12. The box was 10. Is that less than a BridgeWorks? Probably. Yeah, you could put a muffin fan, absolutely. An old computer fan, yes. If you're going to run it, you'll know when you feel the box if it needs to be ventilated. This one, this is another Harbor Freight. I think this was on sale for $3 or $4. It's an ammo box. And I'll pass this one around. It's another, and I pulled the Velcro on here so you can see that power supply a little bit better. There you go. So at least now when people ask me what kind of power supply should I get, and I say, well, why don't you make your own, and they say, how? I can point to the web page. The web page is already there, the video is not. Okay, any questions up to there? I must be doing a very good job of explaining things because there should be.
Well, one question. If it took you 3 hours to make, how long will it take us to make?
I don't know what your design and hole drilling skills are. It didn't take me 3 hours, you know, for those. I could put one together in less than an hour, certainly. Especially if you have one to be patterned from. I know that that power supply will fit in the ammo box from Harbor Freight, and now you know that too, as well as the camera case. Not a big, I mean, there's like, what are there, 10 connections? Maybe fewer than 10? It's not, believe me, if you can't do this, you can't do much with trains other than, you know, okay. All right, there's my on top, my speed control and my forward reverse switch. Okay. No, yes, sir.
For information, those little computer fans,
yes.
those work just perfect, and they will take an awful lot of heat.
Yes, they ventilate nice. You put holes on both ends so it draws through the one and out the other. Absolutely.
They're only what, a couple bucks or something like that.
Say again?
They're only a couple of dollars.
Or if you've got an old desktop computer, before you retire it, you take them out. I've got a box full of them. Yeah.
Where would you put that on?
I'd have to think about it. I might use a CPU fan on there, which is much smaller. I'd probably put it on the top and put some holes in the side. You've got to have holes for the fan and holes for the air to get in. Yeah. Or underneath the power supply. Yeah, as long as there's a path for the air to get through. All right, the next thing I'd like to talk about, and I need to put my train back together. Put you here. All right. I've also had people ask about a simple wireless control system. I showed a couple last year that I built that were DCC based and had all kind of bells and whistles and things. What I wanted to work with was something real simple, a little handheld radio controlled throttle that would allow you to control up to 3 trains. And the thing that inspired me was this little device here, and I'll pass it around so that you can look at it while I'm talking. I have a couple of them. That is a joystick controller. Forward, backward, left, right. I probably have that backwards, right, left. It's a little joystick. and it also has a button. Listen. And I said to myself, I could make a throttle out of that that's really, really simple. So I could use this to go faster, 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 slower, 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 forward, reverse. And if I use the button, I could have, say, 3 receivers on 3 different loops, and I could hit the button to change to receiver 1, receiver 2, receiver 3. And that's all it does. It doesn't have any smoke, it doesn't have any whistles, it doesn't have any lights. But I'll hook it up here. Let me turn it on. It does have a little display which tells you the speed and the channel that you're working on. Again, I'll pass this around in a minute. And it tells me it's going in one direction. If I push it the other side, it slows down and goes the other way. What's inside of here? I'll pass 2 of these around. If you want to control the train, you can go ahead while it's running. Just make sure that the red LED, the first one, is lit and you can control it. I'll slow it down. There. You can play with the train. I'll pass this one around too. It's transparent and you can see what's inside. There are really only 3 parts inside other than that joystick. There's an Arduino, which does all the smart stuff. There's the display, and there's a radio transmitter module. I've talked about this before, something called an HC12, which is a little module, again, about the size of 1 or 2 knuckles on my finger, that does all of the radio, and it's good certainly for a couple hundred feet, more than enough for outside. And that's all written up on my webpage. There's a video that explains that, how to make it, how it works. Any questions on that? And again, you can have up to 3 receivers. So we could be running 3 different trains. And it remembers the speed on train 1 and train 2. It's magic. Okay. There's the transmitters. That little joystick, that's a wonderful tool. And they're a couple bucks. I mean, it's not like any of this stuff is expensive. There's the schematic for the receiver. You buy a motor controller module. That's a box with wires on it, and that's how you connect it up to the Arduino. A couple of LEDs. That's the radio. That's the only thing that's in that receiver. Now, I know that a lot of you are not good at soldering and connecting, but it's something that you certainly could try to tackle. It's not hard. And there's the 3 receivers I put together. Okay, questions up to there? Yes, sir?
What's the cost of that?
Of which? The little radio control thing? In parts, with the single radio control transmitter and 3 receivers, certainly less than $100. More likely about 60, 70. The most expensive thing, the motor control modules are about $10 or $12 a piece, depending upon the type that you buy. And I describe a few different ones. So there you're looking at, say, $30 for 3 of them. The radios are about $6 a piece, and you need 4 radios. So that's $24 there. You need a radio and the transmitter in each of the 3 receivers. I mean, you're going to need some sort of, like an old laptop power supply that I didn't figure into the equation. But it's not that expensive. And it's wonderful to experiment and build something like that yourself. A lot of fun.
What's that compared to the launch pad that they had in the Gardner magazine?
I'd have to go back and review it. I don't know. I don't have a good answer for you.
Kind of looks kind of the same.
I just saw the little joystick and decided to make a transmitter, and yeah, it's cute. Okay, I always like to spend some time giving tips on things that I've discovered over the years. As a matter of fact, sneak preview, I'm creating a series of web pages and videos on tools and tips that I've discovered over the last 50 years of fiddling. And that'll be ready in the next month or so. So if you check back on trainelectronics.com from time to time. Speaking of which, if anybody doesn't know about Train Electronics, you want to pass those around, Bob? Bob has a new knee, so I've been testing him, making him get up. Okay. Anyway, I like to show some tools and things that I've discovered. And of course, nice segue there. Speaking of motors, how about a screwdriver that I can't find? I came across two interesting motorized screwdrivers, one from Banggood. This is great. First of all, that is pretty. It is. It's aesthetically, and a little clamshell with magnets. And there's a screwdriver in there with a button. Forward, reverse, and 18 bits. I will ask you when I pass this around, don't take the little caps off the end and drop the bits on the floor and lose them for me. But this thing, I'll take one bit out and put it in for you. Do the little bitty screws that you have to take out all the time drive you nuts? This thing is beautiful. Let me go to the next. There's another picture that they have on their webpage.
Are the bits magnetized?
I'm not sure. You certainly could magnetize them. They're steel. I'll pass this around. $29.99. I found these on Amazon Prime, as a matter of fact, at Christmas for I think $17, and I bought 3 of them for gifts. Even a grab bag. My niece thought that was the greatest thing in the world. Because women have to take stuff apart too, right? There you go. Okay. So anyway, say about 20 bucks depending upon how it goes. And then I was bad. I saw a video about this screwdriver. And the first reaction I had when I saw the video and I saw the price is, you got to be kidding. It's a computerized screwdriver. You can program it through the computer. It has a display on it, and it was like 100 bucks. But here's the amazing thing about this. There's a little button on here. I'll pass this around. You hold the button down, and nothing happens, but if I turn my wrist to the right, it turns to the right. If I turn my wrist to the left, it turns to the left, and the torque is proportional to how far you turn it. I mean, come on, stand and applaud. I mean, yeah, it doesn't matter. I'll pass it around. I've seen these on, let me see the best price. $99.99. I think I got one for somebody at Amazon for maybe about 10 bucks less than that. This is built like a piece of jewelry. The video that's on YouTube about this, the guy completely took it apart. And it's as well finished inside as it is here. And it's rechargeable. That one there takes AAA batteries, so you have to replace the batteries. This one you plug into USB and recharge. But what I want you to do is hold it horizontally, find the button. The button is right here. I should be on, yeah, okay. Hold it down and you just twist your hand right and then left. And Bruce, you don't have one of those. No. Yet. We know Bruce. He will have one. Yes, okay. Now, yeah, I paid $17. The Wow Stick is that white one that's coming around first. Oh, and I just got an email Wednesday from Banggood. They're on sale for 20 bucks, including shipping. 20 bucks. Okay. Now, for some of us, a variety of bits is more important than having the electric whiz-bang with a light and all that other stuff. I ran across this one. I don't know if you can tell from your seat, but I'll do this for you. Each one of these little hickeys is a bit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Any advanced mathematicians? 56 bits. Plus a handle. Some of those bits are socket bits, you know, not male hickeys, female hickeys. You'll see that when I pass it around. Please don't open this, because I know what'll happen. But the magic, I got that Amazon Prime, and I think it was $12 delivered. And a lot of the bits are things that $12.99 from Amazon. That's not bad. And you're going to need one of those goofy bits to open some secure thing, whether it's your iPhone or whatever, and that's worth the $12.99. And by the way, the bits fit into the fancy screwdrivers too. They're the same shank. Any questions up to there? Okay. Was it a mistake to give them this with this on? Okay. All right. We're going to go back to laser cutters. Yeah, we got simple. We want simple. I put a note here, by far my best purchases of 2015, 2016, and 2017. Yes, I have purchased 3 laser cutters. But I have to tell you, laser cutters to me are 100 times better than a 3D printer. Now granted, there are things the 3D printer will do that a laser cutter won't do, but if you've got a job that can be replicated in 2D and then you can build up thickness with a laser cutter, it is so fast and so precise. I absolutely love it. Let's go through laser cutters real quickly. How many of you have a laser cutter? We know that. Just one? Well, you got a big one. What was the shipping weight on yours? A couple 100 pounds. Yeah. I mean, some are really big. First one I bought a couple years ago, $388 delivered. And I learned so much from that, even though I sold it a year later and got a better one. That was a wonderful laser cutter. And then I got a 50 watt. The shipping weight on this one, the second one that I bought, was 220 pounds. They basically brought it in on a skid and dropped it in my garage and said, have fun. But look at the price. Delivered for $1,520. And it is a marvelous, marvelous machine. Much more capable controller. I'll talk more about that in a minute. Oh, the big things, it'll do 12 by 18, which is quite large for a laser cutter. What's yours go up to, Cliff?
19 by 27.
Yeah, so you can scale. I mean, they have industrial ones that are the size of this table. But, and unfortunately, the bigger they get, the heavier they get, because they need a really, really, really stiff frame to have precision at that expanded size. Okay. Bad thing, the first 2 that I got, the 2 Chinese, had no interlocks, no safeties. Yours?
You can disable it.
Yeah. So you can stick your hand in while it's cutting. And you can stick your eyeballs in there too. So it is not, I recommended last year that if you have children in your life, when you're not using the laser cutter, take the power cord and put it somewhere. I mean, you don't even want to think about a kid turning that on by mistake and putting their hand or some other important part of their body inside, because they are a dangerous.
An assumption that we're adults. So.
Many of you. Yeah. A couple of things that are important. If you do get a laser cutter, they have to be vented. And most of them need to be water cooled. So you have to have a pump that usually comes with it and a bucket of distilled water. The laser tube itself looks like something out of Dr. Frankenstein's lab. I mean, it's got a water jacket and tubes and spinny things and glass and stuff. It's really cool.
It takes the place of a car in a garage. Is that what you're
It's not quite that, no. I mean, mine's in my basement. I have 2 windows in my basement office, and I just put a vent out one of them. I mean, it's big. The big one is, you know, way bigger than a bread box. Must be physically grounded. Don't depend on the third prong on your outlets. Make sure you run it to a real ground. Oh, some folks asked about the Micromark laser knife last year. The one that I bought first for $388 is almost identical to the one from Micromark that they were selling for $2 grand. They've since knocked the price down to $15.89 plus shipping. Theirs is better in a couple ways. It has an air pump that blows the debris out of the way as it's cutting. That's a good thing. My big one has that. Better platen where it cuts. It has a light. It also has a safety interlock, probably easily defeated, but it's got that as well. Is it worth the difference in price? In my humble opinion, no, but you know, that's up to you. Both of them need an outside vent, water bucket for cooling. You also need to have a thermometer watching that water temperature, because it's amazing. I've got a 3-gallon reservoir of distilled water, and if I do a 20-minute cut job, that can go up 15 degrees. And if the water temperature gets up too high, it doesn't cut as well. So I just have a Pepsi bottle full of water in the freezer, and I'll just take that and put it in with the distilled water and let it chill down in a hurry. Oh, you need to buy, for most of them, you need to buy Corel Draw. And there's a student version of Corel Draw. Unfortunately, it won't work. You need the real one, which I paid 150 bucks when I bought mine. It's not cheap. Okay, what can you cut? Most of the time, I'm cutting wood or I'm cutting acrylic, plexiglass. Cliff, what do you cut? Same? Acrylic. Yeah. I mean, you can get the single and double strength plexiglass stuff at the hardware store that they use for storm doors. It cuts beautifully. You can also cut paper, cardboard, cloth, leather. What not to cut, the big one is right there. If you want to go to the hardware store and get some PVC things and cut them up, nope, the C stands for chlorine. And it'll give off chlorine gas, and as soon as chlorine gas hits humidified air, it turns into hydrochloric acid. If it doesn't hurt you, it'll hurt your machine. Even if it's vented, it's going to cause a problem with that. Okay, things that I've made. The first thing that I ever did with the laser cutter is in a bag over here. I was making a lot of auto reversing controlling things, and I made them out of plastic boxes, and these holes needed to be drilled very precisely, and I bought a milling machine. And I knew that it was like 12 turns of the handle to go from here to here. Yeah, it was a real pain. Then I got the laser cutter. Look at this. I drew it in Corel Draw, and there's one in acrylic. It doesn't show real well because of the overhead light. That's just spray painted black. But look at this one. That's a piece of plywood. And I'll pass that around. The thing that's important is these holes, again, they have to be pretty precisely placed. They're right every single time. There's no debate about that. Whereas with my milling machine, I would screw up often. Okay.
You don't need the big laser cutter to make that stuff.
Say again?
You don't need the big laser cutter.
No, I did this on my original.
So what are you making?
On the big one? Well, I'll tell you what. The main difference with the big one, and I'll get to this in a minute, to do this, I had to run the job twice. The first thing I did is I went into Corel Draw and I said, take all the stuff that's lettered, the words, cut them at a power of 20%, because you're only etching it. Then I had to go back and re-index everything and go to this and say, now I want you to go to 100% power and cut out the holes in the outer edge. So it was a pain to do that. The new one will allow me to do things in different colors. Like I would do all the lettering in, say, yellow. And I would say, anything that's yellow, cut at 20%. Anything that's at black, cut at 100. So it'll do it with one. Does that make sense? Yeah. And that's a dramatic difference in utility. That's the biggie. Okay. Let me continue. Oh, I like to do boxes. These boxes. I passed one around earlier. You hear how tight that was? That's done on the laser cutter. And that took, I don't know, 10 minutes to cut. And it's partly wood and partly plexiglass. Works beautifully. That's a clock, by the way, that I have on my desk. There's a little box. Oh, aren't they a pain to lay out? Yeah, they are. But there is a website called Boxmaker. And you go into boxmaker.com and you type in, I want a box, I want it in inches, I want it to be 4 by 5 by 6. My material is 0.1875. And you click on Design It. It sends you a PDF that looks like that. Corel Draw will accept a PDF precisely. No debate. Then what I do in Corel Draw, I cut a hole for the, this was that clock, and I etch in the year, month, day, so on and so forth, these numbers, holes for access, and cut it. Could I do that with woodworking tools, with a dovetail jig? Or, yeah. Yeah. Especially if you want 6 of them. I mean,
how long does it take to get to use Corel Draw?
You're not going to be productive with the Corel Draw in less than a month. It is a professional, it's a really high-end. but there are some videos on YouTube. If anybody ever gets CorelDRAW and they want to learn about it, drop me an email and I'll get you, I can't remember the guy's name. This guy does like 3 videos a day. And he's an engraver guy. He does laser engraving and cutting. If you run across him, Cliff, send me an email. I watch this guy's videos every day. And I learn one little thing. And that's all. Oh yeah, I've become much better in the last 6 months. And I've been using CorelDRAW since CorelDRAW 1, which was in like 98 or 99. Yeah, okay, yeah. I think I showed you the buildings that I did. Real simple building I laid out like that. And again, I would have to cut that in a couple different jobs with the older laser cutter because the bricks, you're only going to score the line, whereas the window and the door and the window, you have to cut those clear through. There's the building. And what I did with that is I painted the back of the plexiglass gray, the front of the plexiglass brick red, and then when I cut the brick lines, you could see the gray looked a little bit like mortar. So that was pretty easy. There's the roof, and there's the little building. Just as an aside, I'm going to show you something in a minute. You can see how big this is. This is a G-scale person, so that building's, that big. This is the exact same building. What did I do? Scaled it down for HO. Actually, less than HO, I suppose. But once you design it, how big do you want it to be? It's up to you. You just grab the corner and, or tell it, I want it to be 3 inches wide or whatever. Oh, my second building, I think I showed this last year. I don't transport it too much because it's fragile. I bought a laser cut station. This is HO. And it sits on my module and covers up a bunch of electronics. And I wanted people to be able to see the electronics, but I wasn't crazy about them taking the building up and then putting it back in the wrong place. So I designed that same building in CorelDRAW. Now that took a half a day. Took a morning. And so I'm talking about 4 hours of sitting at the computer. You can see the detail that's on there. But look what I was able to do. I made it out of acrylic. So now they don't have to lift the building up, they can see through it. And what if I want 6 of them? Or what if I want one bigger? Or, once you get that done. If anybody wants the files, I think it's on my webpage. Okay, this is one I did recently. I used to do, when I had a friend that has a significant birthday, used to be 40, now it's 70. I used to make a brass little radio tower with an LED on the top, and I would program a controller to flash out Happy Birthday Fred in Morse code. And it got tedious making them out of brass, soldering all those little pieces. Look what I did. Oh, it's falling apart because it's not glued. I made a tower out of wood, that same building, right? And a little cell tower top with LEDs in it. And I designed this whole thing in CorelDRAW. This only took me, I don't even think it took an hour. Because I only had to design how many of these? 1, and then triple it. And you can play with this, and if you want, they're little tabs, and it's a triangle. And now I'm much more relaxed when someone sends me a birthday invitation. Because it's not going to take me 6 hours with a soldering iron and flux. I do it this way. I'll pass that around. And don't worry about it falling apart. You can put it back together or just play with it.
Can we send you birthday invitations?
Only if you're turning 70, 80. I guess we're up to 90. Yeah. Okay. There's a finished one. And the circuit and the battery go in the house. You can see the LEDs up there. It turned out real well. That's the whole thing. These are the 3 sides. The 3 sides to the top, a brace for the top, and the hole for the top that has the LEDs in it. Very simple to do. Okay, my favorite laser cutter tip. Does anyone remember where you get good quality 1/8-inch thick plywood? Cliff. Hollow core doors. Where I have a piece here somewhere. Well, that's not working. It's the same color as the table. Well, the thing that I'm passing around, all of this stuff that looks like a door, I don't know where it went. Doesn't matter. In Pittsburgh, there's a place called Construction Junction that recycles stuff, kitchen cabinets and bathtubs and tile, and you can go in the back, and they must have 500 doors. And you go to the hollow, you know what a hollow core door is? Many houses have a plywood, and then some sort of paper or wood or whatever inside. You can buy those things in Pittsburgh for $5. There's 5 or 6 of them there. And you take them home, and you cut the edges off. You know, it's solid wood for the hinges and for the doorknob and stuff. And you rip it apart. And if you're lucky, here's a tip that goes with that tip. When you go to a place like Construction Junction, pick out a door. You don't want a painted door. You want a varnished door. Shake it. And if you hear glue rattling inside, that's really good because the glue's dried out and it makes it much easier to take it apart. If you get one that's fresh, you spend a lot of time getting the glue out with a chisel. It's a real pain. But this is the same stuff. This is the same stuff. And I'll show you this in a minute. That's all these, that's all hollow core door. $5 for, how many square feet do I get out of that? I bet 20. You go online and try to buy high quality birch, you know, A grade. It's really expensive. There's another door kind of torn apart. Have you done that, Cliff?
No.
Oh, breaking my heart. All right, this slide is from last year. My third laser cutter is on order. It's a Glowforge. Glowforge was you know what Kickstarter is? It's where somebody has a really great idea and they go out to the community and say, I need so much money to make this thing. Glowforge. They raised $27 million in 30 days. It's the greatest amount of money ever generated on Kickstarter. I had a couple grand of that invested. And I said, should arrive in July. This was me talking last March. I've been waiting for 15 months. There it is. Isn't that pretty? You can put it in your living room. Guess what? I got it in December. It's spectacular. It's got, I don't even know what the bed size is. It's bigger than the other one. It's probably 18 by 24. But they spent a lot of money on design. Let me show you this. First of all the software is cloud-based. So you can do all your design on an iPad, you can do it on a desktop computer, you can do it on Linux, you can do it on a Chromebook, it doesn't matter. You're actually going to their website and using that to import your designs from CorelDRAW or whatever. You don't have to use that. It doesn't require water for cooling. They have a cooling system. It still puts water through the tube, but that water, or antifreeze, whatever it is, goes into a radiator that's in front of the blower, so it's an internal. They also are coming out with a charcoal filter so you don't even have to vent it. Yeah. Source projects online. There's some of my, there's the PRR. See it? Okay. Here's the biggie. Let me show you a couple things. This is looking down at the bed. This is the bed that you cut on. And you can see it's well, you can't tell how big it is. You don't have a reference. This is the laser tube. Glass tube at the back in there. This yellow arrow is pointing to a camera. When you close the lid, it scans what's in there and gives you a picture of what you put in there. And you can move your work around and put it wherever you want. Did that make sense? So that if I have a piece of this is a piece of plexiglass with white covering on it, I already cut this out. So it's taking a picture and I can say, oh, I need to put my work over here. Or I need to turn it and put it down here, which you can't do with the other one. There's the PRR. Anybody know why it's backwards? No, I'll talk about that in a minute. Grave it on the back, yeah. And once you get that into their software, it again takes the colors and breaks them apart. And you can choose from that whether you want to score a line, which is a real light cut, whether you want to engrave, which is what I did on that PRR stuff down there, we'll get to that, as I said, in a minute, cut, which would be the outline, what goes clear through, or ignore, because there are times that you have something in there, oh, I don't really want to cut that part, so just ignore it. And there's this. And you can see that it says, oh, what are we going to do? We're going to score this. We're going to engrave the letters and the Dave, and we're going to cut the that. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. And there it is on the, and some of you have asked about time. It takes 5 minutes and 29 seconds. So as soon as I press the button on the machine, it starts up, and in 5.5 minutes it's done. The downside, I'll give you a second to look that over. It's expensive. Yeah, the Pro is $7 grand, the basic one is $4 grand. They're shipping the Pros right now.
What's the difference between the Pro and
Speed, power, yeah, primarily those two things. Built like a tank. I got a Pro, and you can run it continuous. You could have a factory, turning stuff out continuously. The good news, if anyone has any interest at all in this, they sent me this. So if anybody's thinking about buying one, let me know and I can send you that code, or you can take it off of the slides. Give you $1,500 off of $6,000. It's still a lot of money, but it's pretty. Even my wife thinks it looks nice. Okay, questions up to there. If I had the choice between laser cutter and 3D printer, no debate at all. 3D printers go away. Laser cutter. I can have the laser cutter functional in a minute. And I can have a job done in anywhere from 30 seconds to 10 minutes. 3D printer, you got to level the bed. You got to make sure the filament's okay. You got, I mean. Yeah. And the detail you want may or may not come up. Yeah. Yeah, it's, I don't know. I don't use my 3D printers very often. Okay, I showed you this last year.
Your attention, we are going to do the door prize drawing in about 3 minutes.
Okay. This is a component tester. This is magic. I don't know who invented this, but I'd like to meet them. This is a display, and this is what's called a zero insertion force socket. You can stick a component in there. Into these pins, you can put a resistor, an LED, a diode, a transistor, a MOSFET, a capacitor, anything out of your junk box, and press a button, wherever the button is right here, and it'll tell you what it is and what the value is. I mean, the first time I played with one of these, it was like magic. You can put a transistor in any way you want, and it'll tell you which lead is the emitter, which one's the collector, which one's the base, and how it's oriented. And if you turn it over, it'll do the same thing again, but it'll tell you the numbers are in a different order. I mean, it's really magical. Okay, that's cool. It'll test transistors, resistors, capacitors, inductors, automatically determines what it is and its orientation. There's the output. If you put an if you put a transistor in, there's the transistor. It says, oh, it's an NPN transistor. Pin 3 is the collector, pin 1 is the emitter, pin 2 is the base, and it gives you the characteristics of that transistor. And it does it in a matter of, I don't know, 2 or 3 seconds. The latest version, this is a new one that I got. It's got a color screen, and I'll show you the next slide. Oh, by the way, let me go back. Whoop, didn't want to go that way. $30 from Amazon, or no, that's eBay. $30. It tests infrared remotes, so that if you have to be a programmer to appreciate this, you can take an infrared remote, like your TV remote, and hit it, and it'll tell you what codes it's actually sending out, so that you can replicate that with your Arduino. Yeah, I'll pass this around. there is an LED in here. The thing that's so cool, when you hit the button, you'll see the LED flash, because what it's doing is it's thinking, oh, that could be a transistor, it could be a resistor, it could be a capacitor. It's doing all kinds of things. And you'll see it blink, and then it comes back and says, oh, it's a diode, which an LED is. It tells you the orientation and how it works. Please don't lift up on this lever, because the LED will fall out and you'll probably lose it. Pass that around. A component tester. Okay. They're making you work. Okay, LEDs. I showed you this. I did a lot of work with LEDs last year. We talked about the fact that we have to put a battery in or it won't work. We talked about, here we go. I think everyone is familiar with LED strip lights. You use them under your kitchen cabinets or in a valance or whatever. You can also get these that are in color. This actually has 3 different colored LEDs. It's got red, green, and blue, and you can see it kind of cycling through those. Then the next step is they had pretty big LED, maybe 5 millimeters square, and in that square there were 3 colored LEDs. And that's what's happening here. So you're seeing, it looks as though every LED is changing color.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the East Coast Large Scale Trade Show.
I'll stop. This one is 3 separate LEDs in each little box. The next one, but every one has to be the same color. In other words, you saw that when they turn green, they all turn green. This is my favorite. Not only does each little box have 3 LEDs in it, it has a controller in the little 5 millimeter box. And the Arduino can say, LED number 7, go to brightness 12 and color 43. And that's what's happening here. That's also what's happening over here. This is that thingy that I made for Children's Hospital just to entertain the kids. And I think I told you a story last year. There's a sequence in here where it goes through a bunch of bright white. You remember the story I told you with relation to that? Let's see if it'll come up. This one. I took a video of that and sent it to their neurology department and said yes or no. And they said no. Could bring about a seizure. We're too old for that. But kids have seizures. But these are the same types of LEDs that's going on here and here. Is my top little guy working too? Yeah, okay, sometimes he gets, some of this stuff doesn't travel well. So I'm glad everything's working. But we're going to digress and talk about LEDs for a minute. All of this stuff is readily available on eBay with controllers that'll let you do it all. I mean, it's marvelous. But I wanted to kind of bring together the laser cutter and LEDs. Laser cut. How long did it take me to design that in CorelDRAW? Not very long, because I went into Google Images and searched for PRR and took an image off of that and traced it. But the real magic is this. You can buy these little bits. Can you see what's inside? Same stuff, right? This one comes with a remote control, so I can change the color, I can change the sequence, I can change the speed. This on Amazon is about 15 bucks. You can find them on eBay out of China for about 7. And if you have access to a laser cutter, all you do is make sure there's a tab at the bottom that goes down into there, and it lights up beautifully.
The first door prize number was 183111. We're still waiting for you to claim your prize.
All right, the other one I have here, this one does not have a remote control. In some ways, I like this one better because if you look at it, you'll see just change colors. Very subtle, low speed. No remote control. It does have a button on the front that is like a finger touch button. You can change the color and turn it on and off. This from China, 4 bucks. So again, if you have, or if you wanted to make it, could you make a sign like that with a Dremel? Yeah, if you're real patient. I mean, engraving is engraving. You do it any way you want. I'll pass this around. Just be warned, if you touch the button on top there, it may change doing what it's doing. Not that it's going to hurt anything. And that's running on 3 AA batteries. Question?
If you're looking for that on eBay, what do you look for? What's it?
I think I looked for LED base, 7-color LED. If you can't find it, and do I have that on my web page yet? Maybe. If not, you know, my email. Yeah. Okay. There's. Oh, you can also buy really fancy design thingies like that's beautiful. You can buy that with the base. And the PRR, again in CorelDRAW. And when you pass that through and you see it, you'll see it's engraved on the back. It looks better if you're looking at the smooth side and the engraving is on the back side. Although you can do it either way. Oh, here we go. LED lamp base for 3D illusion, acrylic light panels, you know. But they're, again, readily available. And that you can power them from USB too. I made one for a buddy of mine that has a shop, and it's in his window, and he just has it plugged into a USB, and it just runs 24 hours a day. And this one here, $4.25 from eBay. You'll wait a couple weeks to get it. All right, I kind of badmouth 3D printers, but I do have a good one. This is a Prusa that was the top 3D printer on Make Magazine a year ago. It's wonderful. I don't like 3D printers as much as laser cutters. It's been marked down to $5.99 for a kit. It's not a trivial kit, but any of you that are builders, you could build it in a day or two. Took me a day and a half, I think. Comes from the Czech Republic. This guy's an artist. And he decided he needed a 3D printer. He designed one. He's now got 200 or 300 employees. He's one of the biggest 3D printer manufacturers in the world. Seems to be a nice guy. There's what it looks like. It'll do a pretty big, I can't remember the numbers, but it's maybe 6 or 8 cube, 8-inch, pretty big size.
Why is that better than the other?
The main thing that it has that I really like is it self-levels the bed. If you've ever worked with a 3D printer, the real bugaboo is if the bed is not level, your stuff's not going to stick and it's going to peel off and you'll ruin it. So what this does, it has a sensor on the print head, and there are 9 magnets in the print bed. And it goes to each of those 9 magnets every time you start a print, and it says, oh, this one's a little twisted, this one's just right, and it makes an adjustment in software. It's really nice. And the new version, there's a new one that I'm showing right here, not only has that, but the plate that you print on slides off and you can bend it and the work will pop right off. That's another nightmare with 3D printers. If you do a really good job of getting your work to fit on the plate, you got to get a putty knife and a hammer to get it off sometimes. And you run a chance of gouging. I mean, yeah. They're not, have you noticed that nobody's selling consumer ones anymore? Dremel's kind of backed off and everybody, they're not meant for typical home use. You've got to have somebody that's a nerd. You know, you're here, you're a nerd. All right. Oh, okay. Let's talk about the little crossing sign, because this brings a lot of things together in our discussion. I really like this little badge and the little blinky lights, and I made this, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. And I wanted to do a better job so that people in the train club that I belong to showed an interest in having them. So I decided to kind of update it. And this is laser cut, that's easy. But I also wanted to make a new circuit for the back. Something that you don't think about when you look at this, but if I'm going to have to make 10 of them or 20 of them for club members. So what I did is I designed a new circuit board, a new design in CorelDRAW, and that's the back of it. And it turned out real nicely. Here I've got my LEDs, and they're coming over to a section of the board, and the board is cut like that. Can you see it's T-shaped or X-shaped? This is a battery holder. So the whole thing, and I can show you, here we go. So this is the whole thing, and this is the circuit. I didn't glue this one on, so it's just sitting there. And I'll pass this around and let you look at it. It's reasonably fragile, so don't step on it or anything. But the thing that's really cool, let me show you this. Another skill that you might want to teach yourself. There's the Corel Draw. Let me explain another thing. You had asked about why I like the one laser cutter better than the other. Let me do a close-up here in a minute. If you look carefully, can you see this is black, that's green, and that's yellow? Engrave, score, cut. That's how you tell the laser cutter what you want it to do. Then what I did, there it is cutting. You can see it's already done the letters, done Dave and so on and so forth. It's actually going through and cutting that out. And that's the circuit board. There's free software you can use to design circuit boards. And I'll pass these around. I think I paid 25 bucks for 30 of those. That's the actual circuit board. You lay out where you want your components to be. This is nothing more than like a different version of Corel Draw. You design, you put components in. Instead of putting circles and rectangles, you're putting in pads and such. And there's all the pieces that go onto the back of it. And again, this is written up on my web page as well as a YouTube video. Just to give you an idea of the size that you can get into. Maybe I can't. Where it is. Here. This is a string of about 100 resistors. I'll pass this around. Get your good reading glasses out. I'm passing around a string of those. It's, I don't know, 1.5 millimeters wide, 2 millimeters long, something like that. And I explain how you solder those, because it's kind of a tedious process, but it's not really tremendously difficult. Speaking of solder, any questions up to there, by the way? Okay, we're doing well. I'm going to try to stop around 11:30 because there's another talk at noon, and I need about a half hour to make this go away. Otherwise, the other guy and I will have a difficulty. I've talked about this before. If you're going to be a soldering person, you need a good soldering iron. I have yet to find one better than this. It's from Marlon P. Jones in Florida. There's the item number, 47 bucks. Unfortunately, they're out of stock right now, but they'll get them back in. The thing that's really beautiful about this is it's thermostatically controlled. You set the temperature to 520 degrees Fahrenheit and it stays there. And if you need to do something that's bigger and more difficult to solder, you can crank it up and down. But the thing that's very cool, 46 bucks, which is dirt cheap. You can buy a junky Weller and spend 50 bucks. I had one of these. I was using it, I don't know, a year and a half, and it died one morning. And I panicked, went on their website, ordered another one. Well, when it came in, I started experimenting. This is the handle. This part, this is like 7 bucks. That's what was bad. The heater went. So I now have about 6 of these on the shelf and 2 soldering stations. But Bob, you want to pass that around? Okay, Marlon P. Jones. Very nice. Also, I've shown this before. This is the greatest stuff in the world to clean the tip of your soldering iron. It's like a spun aluminum. And it doesn't cool the tip, it doesn't make a mess, because putting water in a sponge, and it's not pretty. Okay. Also Marlon P. Jones and other places. I showed this last year. This was something I absolutely didn't believe would work. That's a USB-powered soldering iron. And it does work. You're not going to do much more than just a thin wire onto a circuit board, but it'll work. And you can't just plug it into a laptop. Most laptops will only put out a 1/2 amp. You have to use one of these things, battery charging thing, because they'll put out usually 1 amp or more. But it works, and I think it was about 8 bucks. They also make a bigger one that runs on 12 volts. You could attach it to a cigarette lighter plug and use it in the car. This works very well. But the one I have to show you, do you remember I told you I was bad when I bought the drill or the screwdriver? By the way, did you like the screwdriver? I mean, is that amazing or what? Where it is, here. This is its brother. The same people that made this That's a soldering iron. It has a display. It has an accelerometer. You can reprogram it. And believe me, this works very well. This was like 60, 70 bucks on Amazon. It comes with a plug-it-in power supply. So you can see it light up. And I can adjust. Here's one. First of all, it has an accelerometer. So if you put it down in about a minute or a time you set, it'll cool down to a preset temperature. As soon as you pick it up, it'll start ramping back up to the other temperature. And if you let it sit for another time you choose, it'll shut off completely. Plus, you can just put a plug in here, and where are my batteries? I have 3 cell phone batteries I can use to power this for about a half an hour. And it works. I used it this morning because one of the wires on one of my gizmos broke in transit. It's called a TS100. It's been out for a couple of years. Oh, open source, which means there are people that they have made the software public and the controls public so that if somebody wants to write their own software and distribute it, they can. It's really nice. How about that?
Now you had electric here, so you really didn't need it. But
I didn't. I used the plug-in. I saved my battery. Yeah, but I did use it. Okay, I'm going to digress for a minute. Everybody know what a fidget spinner is? I got to tell you a story about fidget spinners. Really stupid. But I had to have one. So I ordered one off of eBay or someplace, and I spun it, and I said, okay, that's really cool. And I put it down. No. But anyway, I started thinking, I was an elementary school science teacher for a number of years, almost decades. And I can remember teaching kids how a motor worked. And I would have a magnet in my left and right hand and a commutator on my neck, and I did all kind of stupid things. I said, you know what, that fidget spinner looks a little bit like the motors I used to demonstrate with the kids. So I built basically a brushless motor with a fidget spinner. There's a coil here. I put magnets on each of the fidget spinner arms, and there's a little switch over here that it hits every time it goes by. And I'm not going to guarantee this is going to work, but let me see if I can fire it up. But the amazing part of the story, okay. That's how a brushless motor works. We have brushless motors. All the drones and things are brushless motors. So I came up with a couple different ways to build this, including one. Let me show you this one. This is great. I replaced, you heard that little switch getting hit, click, click, a lot of friction, bad things. This one has a digital magnetic sensor called a Hall effect sensor. Wait till I get this one fired up. No noise, just the bearing. That's cooking. But here's the amazing part of the story. I wrote that up, as I always do, put a couple of YouTube videos up there. YouTube decided he did a pretty good job of explaining this. They featured it. I'm over 250,000 hits on that video. And I get emails from kids literally all over the world thanking me for it, asking how to modify something. I'm using this for a science project. It's been wonderful. But YouTube's an interesting environment. I'm up to 4,000 some subscribers. That's a lot. But, you know, 250,000 hits on a fidget spinner, for God's sake. Anyhow, if you want to build one, the notes are on my webpage. There's the basic one I was just showing you. Shows the magnets, the coil, and the switch. There's the circuit diagram. There's nothing to it. There's the one with the Hall effect sensor that doesn't actually touch. Stepper motors. A stepper motor is a type of brushless motor that is typically used, you all have them at home if you have a laser printer, if you have a color printer, inkjet printer. You notice how the carriage moves very precisely, the head moves very precisely. That's what a stepper motor is famous for. And I bought some stepper motors. Here's one here. That's a geared stepper motor. And I put it underneath a little platform. And if I can find where I plug it in, here, this will work. The thing that's important about stepper motors for model railroaders I don't know if you noticed what just happened. I'll do it again because it's kind of neat. When I turn it on, when I first turn it on, I need 4 hands here. Let me explain this first. Right here is a magnet. Right here is a magnetic sensor because a stepper motor does not know where it is. As soon as you power it up, watch it spin until it finds, it found the magnet. Now, I have it programmed to do quarter circles. It'll do those precise to a fraction of a millimeter forever. What could you use this for? Turntable. That's how turntables are operated. And I can throw some switches over here. Instead of having it do force, I can have it do 30 seconds. This stepper motor steps 512 times per revolution. Is that precise enough for your tracks to line up? The amazing thing, let me pass these around. Here's a box of 5 of them from Amazon delivered for $11.99. Now you have to have an Arduino to tell it what to do. 5 stepper motors and 5 power control boards for 12 bucks. So what you get for the 12 bucks is 5 of these and 5 of these. Then you have to have some sort of smart controller to tell it exactly what to do. But that's not particularly difficult. I'll digress from model railroads for a minute. This is one of the hardest projects I've ever done. This drove me crazy for about 2 months. I like clocks. And I did a bunch of digital clocks that would do Westminster chimes and all kinds of other things. But they needed hands. And there are 2 of those stepper motors on the back. And those hands are connected to them. Now, it's not going to work here because it's looking for my network. It actually goes out onto my Wi-Fi, finds the time, and sets itself. But you remember the turntable had to find the magnet? Watch what happens when I power it up. Give me a second here. Watch what it does. It has to 0, so it goes to noon. Now it's looking for the Wi-Fi and it's not going to find it. But when it would find it, it would go to 11, whatever time it is, 11:25 and stop. And then update. And it also has a speaker on the back. It's got one of those little MT3 players that did the thunder and lightning. It does Westminster chimes on the quarter hour, the half hour, the 3/4, and bongs and stuff. But I'll pass around a couple of the gears. I would not have been able to do that without the laser cutter. I mean, look at the gears I was able to cut. Do you remember boxmaker.com or whatever it's called? Let me skip ahead here a minute. Let me see if I can find this for a second. Here. Geargenerator.com. This is a free website. You tell it what you want, it'll give you a PDF just like the Boxmaker gave you a PDF, right into my laser cutter, scale it to whatever size I want, and cut it. The world is really a lot.
What would be your source of gears?
What's that?
Not having that, what would your source of gears be?
I don't know. I'd try to go online and find something that matched what I wanted, but I don't know. I don't know if I could have done it. So that's the whole idea. The laser cutter and the 3D printer, really, both of those empower us to do things we were not otherwise able to do. You're Superman or woman. Yeah, okay. There's one of the digital clocks, you know, 1229 with a speaker on top, so it does the. Okay, last thing I want to show you before we're running out of time. This is one of my favorites. I belong to the Pittsburgh Garden Railway Society, and we do a lot of community layouts and things, Greenberg shows and so on. I decided we needed a rolling advertising car. So I put 8 LED displays inside of this pair of cars. And let me find a place here. Let me fire him up. Normally this operates off of track power, but I don't have any track. And it's doing the same thing on the back. Now I was pleased with this. What's that? Faster, yeah. Bob, you're lucky I'm still talking. Okay. Here's the really cool thing. In order to change the method, when I first designed this, I had to go into my computer and change the message in the Arduino software and reprogram it. Then it occurred to me, there's something called Bluetooth, which we use to communicate with our cars from our phones and everything else. I put a Bluetooth card in there. Watch this. I can go to my phone. Hello, phone. Wake up. Yes, that's my fingerprint. There's a program, free, called BlueTerm. Watch. It has to finish. Or I can have it say, it has to finish one message. It won't abort one. Here we go. This is on my web page. It is also on YouTube. We got one more. So we can actually say to a kid, Johnny, what's your name? Little kid, what's your name? And we can type in Merry Christmas or Happy Birthday, Johnny, or whatever. Or we can say, get your fingers off the track. Yeah, there's all sorts of things we can do. All right.
No running.
There's what the inside looks like. There's the 2 cars, and there's the 8 displays. 1, 2, 3, 4 in one car, 1, 2, 3, 4 in the other. The electronics, the Bluetooth module, works very well. Very well. We've used that at a number of shows.
What's the cost of that?
I have no idea. An aside. Look how nicely the holes are cut for the displays. I'm serious. How did I do it? I put the box cars in the laser cutter and cut the rectangles out with the laser cutter. I made a jig so all the cuts would be, lined the same. But yeah, it was wonderful. These displays, I'm going to say maybe $6 a piece. So 6 times 8 is 48. $5 for the electronics. Bluetooth module is a couple bucks.
When you cut them in the laser cutter, did you have to take them apart or you just...
No. The one laser cutter I have has a movable bed. You can put real thick stuff in it. The other 2 of them do not. All right, one other thing I wanted to show you that's related to that.
If I can have your attention, please.
No.
Attention all Facebook members of the G-Scale and Swap Meet groups. A group picture will be taken today at 11:50 a.m. outside the seminar room. All members are urged to meet outside the seminar room at 11:50 for your annual photo. Thank you.
I know that not too many of you are going to make one of these, although it's well documented. Okay? This you can buy for about $12. And you can program it with your computer. You can put 8 or 10 messages, and there's a button in the back you can change the messages. So wouldn't that be nice, like for a theater or something on your layout? And I also, of course, I don't stop at that. I put a motor on it. So you get 2 of them, right? Back to back. And I'll put that up on the screen. Banggood. Everybody knows Banggood. Banggood is a Chinese website that will just drive you crazy because it'll cost you a lot of money. They have so many toys. This was $12.99. And it comes with a piece of software. There's the software, and that's putting in Pittsburgh Garden Railway Society. Pretty cool. I think I have exhausted, oh no, well, no, I don't need to do that. I did that last year. I'm just trying to get out of here before this guy and I bump heads. Questions? Thank you. That was fun. Okay. If you want to look at any of this stuff, I'm just going to start packing up. Feel free. This one is running on a power bank, but when we rendered shows, it picks up power from the wheels, and you know,